Hey guys, injury lawyer Scott DeSalvo here, and I did a video for you about the importance of a police report on getting a police report done if you've been involved in any kind of car versus pedestrian or bike versus pedestrian or car versus car, any kind of injury or collision or crash between a car or a truck or a bicycle or a motorcycle, any sort of motor vehicle accident involved thing, you got to do a police report. And we talked a little bit why in the last video, but I wanted to actually show you, I think I mentioned it in the last video, I actually wanted to show you the police report so that you could see all the important information we get out of these things, right? So the first thing I want to mention is this is the orange document that you always get anytime there's a motor vehicle crash, like a car crash, truck crash, motorcycle, anything like that, right? This is not a crash report. This is the Illinois Motorist Report, and this is always, I think it's always like handwritten, and it's often very difficult to read, and this is not the official crash report, right? This is like more about an exchange of information, right? So when we're looking at a crash report, these days it's usually typed in. Now I've obviously blacked out things to keep things private for people, but this is the one that basically says Illinois Traffic Crash Report, right? So what do you need to know about the Illinois Traffic Crash Report? Well, the first thing, we'll just go top to bottom. Over here, this is the RD number. It's the report number, okay? Super important to have the report number so that we can order this and reference it if we ever have to. Up here are a bunch of numeric codes that the officer puts in, and this includes things like the temperature, the road conditions, all of these, the lighting conditions, all this sort of stuff. And there's a template that you can find online. I've got one in my office. Good attorneys do, but this gives us information about what the officer says happened and the crash, right? Down here we get the location of exactly where it happened and the date and the time, which again is super important. And then this section is for Unit 1, and they usually put the person who they think caused the collision in Unit 1, and then the other cars get put in Unit 2, and they can attach additional pages of this document if it's, a multi-vehicle situation. But what information do we get here? Well, we get the defendant's name, the defendant's date of birth, their address, their phone number, their driver's license, their plate number. All of that information helps me find the defendant if they're ducking us. It also tells us the owner of the car too, right? So if we get a plate number and they run a plate and we know who the owner is, but it's a hit and run, the law presumes that the owner of the car was driving it, right? And then this is another important box here, who the insurance is, the policy number, all that stuff. Super important to know. And then there's a little diagram here that shows where the damage to the car was. So that's important if two people have a very different idea of two different stories about how the crash occurred. Sometimes that physical evidence is very important, right? In determining who actually caused the crash. And then we get that information for the other drivers as well. This is an important area too. This is people who were injured and or witnesses, right? So if somebody tells the police officer they saw the whole thing, but you were not in a position to go get any witnesses' phone numbers or names, these boxes here record the witnesses. It usually includes some identifying information, including address and phone number, which makes it easier for us to investigate. And then down here, it's usually like if somebody got a ticket, they include that info, and then, the court date and all that stuff. So that's the most important stuff. These are numeric codes here too, and there's a template for them as well. It gives us like lots of detailed information about the crash. So that's the first side, and these are double-sided. So the second side is really important too because, well, we've got the RD or report number here, and then the officer draws a diagram about what he or she thinks happened, or if they saw it, they draw it based on memory. Otherwise, it's based on an interview of the witnesses and people involved. And then down here, this is the narrative section where the officer writes down either what he or she saw and or what the witnesses and parties said. So this can be useful too, right? So if Unit 1, who caused the crash, starts telling us a story about what happened and we know it's not true, but on the day of the crash they told the officer something else, that's super important for us to know, right? So, you can see that even though this looks like a bunch of gobbledygook, if you actually sit down and read it, there's a lot of really important information here. And that's why getting a police report and investigating it and reading it and taking the time to get the information off the report is super important. So hopefully that makes things more clear for you. If you have any questions, give me a holler. Thanks for watching and have a great day.